Rand, tell the people who you are, and tell everyone a little bit about PeopleCount.
So I've been a software developer for many years, and I'm an expert problem solver. And a few years ago, I was taking a course in looking at life newly. And I looked at myself and saw that I was resigned about politics. And that doing that meant I went along with the status quo, which I was not happy with. And I realized I cared deeply about people and that politics matters and that I should get involved. And I went on an adventure for 6 months of trying to get involved, being frustrated, wondering if it really mattered. And I spent 2 months just talking with people whether it mattered, and then 2 months about what we would want. If you had a government that you loved, what would that look like? And it looked like we, really need improvement. And so I then did a problem-solving exercise where I just, looked at the different parts and tried to understand it. And I do this all the time in my work.
You broke it out like an engineering problem.
Yeah, it's mainly studying it and looking at all the different things. And in politics, it looks like a lot of people are doing the wrong thing.
No,
and as long as that's happening,
this is an interesting approach, because so many things recently have popped into our world because of brilliant engineers. Elon Musk is launching rockets into outer space at costs that nobody thought were possible. So I'm all ears. This is an interesting approach.
And as long as people were wrong to me, I knew I was inside the box, that I wasn't really understanding it. And then finally, after a couple of months, I realized that everybody was doing exactly what they should be. In the system we have, everybody's doing what's appropriate, which is certainly what everybody tries to do. And so I knew I was getting somewhere. And what I saw was that actually there's nothing wrong with our political system. It's working exactly as designed. It's not working as intended, but that's just because, when it was designed 240 years ago, everything was much different than it is now. And over the years, society has adjusted to it, and, things have changed. And the main part that I saw was that it's not really broken, but democracy depends on politicians being accountable to voters. And we don't have that, and that's why it doesn't work. And when I looked at that lack of accountability, it explained pretty much everything. And so I started talking to people, and what is accountability? Most Americans don't even know. Like, why don't you try this? Can you come up with a good definition or a decent definition of democracy?
A good definition of democracy would be a political system in which the people vote to elect representatives, right, who then legislate.
Yeah, in short, a democracy reflects the will of the people. It's where the people govern.
Right. Adam said,
and in a direct democracy,
majority rule, but he's reminding us that we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic.
No, we're actually a republic, which is a constitutional democracy. So we are a democracy, but we're governed by a constitution.
Right.
And we're also a federation of states. But that, or we should be a democracy, but we don't function as a democracy, because voting for representatives is not enough to create accountability. It's not enough to have this, every 2 years being able to fire them. We've seen it over and over again. We have very low approval of Congress and of the president now, and yet we have elections. So clearly it's not enough. And if I would ask you what, you want to give a hazard, try to say what accountability is?
Accountability.
Most Americans that I've talked to.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Accountability.
So most Americans that I've talked to.
Yeah, go ahead.
So they guess honesty or transparency, or that the people are representative, and that's part of it. But accountability really is, if I'm accountable to you, if I'm your politician and I'm accountable to you, we have a relationship where you, the boss, tells me what to do, and you expect results, and then I account to you for what I've done and what I'm going to do.
Right. In a company, it's very simple. When you're accountable for a particular role, week in, week out, some manager is observing your performance and making sure that you are either hitting goals or doing the clearly stated objectives. So, and if you don't, from week to week in a company, right, you'll get let go.
Yeah. So if we take that apart a little bit, the boss is, telling me what to do and expecting results, and I'm accounting to him. I'm reporting regularly, and not just saying the things I want to report on, but really answering him. And then he judges me.
Right.
Or she judges
right.
me. And then he or she can fire me.
Right.
And with politics, it would be exactly the same thing, except you, the boss, are like 1 million or 200 million people. So you have to communicate with other voters about what we want and what we expect. And you have to judge me with other voters.
Right.
So if we had that, consider that I, as a politician, right now, can't be accountable to you. Imagine I was your senator, and I had just, co-sponsored a bill so that people who have mental illness can't buy guns. And I can't tell you about it. You're not, unless you're on my newsletter, I can't tell you. And let's say you want to know about, what DACA is doing. I can't tell you. If you do get my newsletter, you'll get the message about this thing that passed about guns, but how do you find out about DACA? And so we need a system that does this. So I designed it basically to tell me what to do. You would vote on issues. And then to expect results, you would see the results of the vote. And if it's, a large majority, if it's, 70 or 80%, you would expect me to take action. And if it's, if it's 50-50 yes or no, you would expect me to either say, it's 50-50, we really shouldn't change anything at the moment, or, we should come up with a compromise. It'd be best if I came up with a compromise and ran it past you, right? So by voting on issues, you can tell me what to do and expect results. And then on an issue, you could check a box that says, report to me. And in the beginning, let's say it's report to me monthly. And so I would, so one person would write about gun control, and the other one would check up the box on DACA, and I would write a report at the end of the month for each of them, and you would get, this report. So I would account to you. And now you have to judge me. So let's say you just give me a grade on that issue, on that report, on how satisfied you are that not that I'm doing what you want, but that I'm doing what the whole district or the whole state wants. If I'm your senator, the whole state. And so you would grade me, and then over time, we'd have this relationship where I'm reporting to you and you're grading me, At the same time, some challenger who doesn't have much money, but thinks he can do better, could also report to you for little money, at low cost. And so you could have a relationship with me, doing what I'm doing, and you could also have a relationship with, this other senator, this other challenger, and she'd be telling you what she would do instead. And so you could judge us, get to know us, and when the election came, you could see, how you've graded me. You could see how the district in general has graded me, and you'd have a relationship with us, so you could make a better choice. And that would, just voting on issues would draw you into the issue, would ask you real questions. Right now, you can spout any old opinion, and you don't have to, weigh in on some of the more difficult parts. And so people find it easy to be irresponsible about what they want. But if you actually had some responsibility, you would go to more trouble to learn about it, and you would listen to me and to the other challengers and get some real input. So that's the basic system.
So let me ask, so in this system, would there be some type of portal? How is this done online?
Right. So
how am I? Is this something Facebook would launch?
So in the beginning, it'll be a website, and you can go to it on your laptop or desktop or your iPad or your tablet or your phone. But it'd be a website in the very beginning, and then there'd be a phone app, so you could do it more easily on the go.
You have a announcement to make on this Facebook Live.
So
before I get into more questions about PeopleCount, I want everyone to have the same context of you that I do.
Okay. So I've been working on this for years, and I've talked to hundreds of people, and there's sufficient reception for it, but almost no one has stepped up to participate. A couple people did once, and we started building, but then they had life circumstances take them out. So I've been moving this forward alone, and it doesn't really work to do it alone. So I'm looking for funding and looking to get the message out.
Right, but you have another.
So I've decided to run for. Right, so I've decided to run for California Senate, or as the California Senator against Dianne Feinstein.
You're announcing
and
your
I'll be starting
candidacy here on this Facebook Live.
Absolutely.
You've heard it here.
So, and there's another component to it.
So
there's another component to it. There are lots of. You want to say more?
You're going to run.
Yes, I'm running for office.
Even if what you really believe is kind of the solution to make everything better in government politics, even if that doesn't happen, you're still going to run. And worst case scenario, you're just a U.S. senator.
Well, that's not the worst case. The worst case is neither happens. But I'm running as the first senator who proposes to be completely accountable to citizens. And there's another component to it. There are other interesting political reform things. One is called liquid democracy. On PeopleCount, the people will vote on issues and get reports on progress. But a lot of people are unhappy about their lack of power for voting on bills, and that you can only elect senators once every 6 years. So there's something called liquid democracy, where you can actually vote on bills or appoint someone as your proxy, and that can change at any time. So by default, you'll also have me as your proxy in this liquid democracy site, and it's called United.Vote. United.Vote, and it's available today. So you can go log in there and create an account for $1. And you'll be able to nominate, set your proxy and vote on on bills before Congress. I don't think a lot of people will want to do that, but
let me ask you a question.
Some people
How
might.
does all this?
So hold on one second.
Ahead.
So I'm running as the first fully accountable senator, and I'll have to build this system to, the PeopleCount system, make it go live in order to do that. And at the same time, I'm running as a liquid democracy candidate, that if enough people are on United.Vote, then on bills, I will vote as the people dictate.
Seth wants to know if when he signs up for United.Vote, if he can pay in Bitcoin.
I don't think so. They've just started up. They have a credit card payment. And part of that is to verify your identity, and they use that money to verify your identity against voter registration data in the states.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Voters have the ability to vote on certain issues every however many years when a particular issue is on the ballot, right? So there is a sort of...
Yeah, let me clarify that. Okay. So the way it's designed today, I have a small demo of it. You go on the site, and there are 5 categories.
I'm not talking about your site. Right now, in our current government, in our current political process,
right,
people do vote for politicians, but they also, in the voting booths, they also vote on certain specific propositions. Right. So voters do have today, they do have direct access to, I guess, specific issues. How
once in a while.
So what you're really saying is the same way that voters learn about the propositions and say, am I a yes or a no to any particular prop, that they along the way with their political leader, they're sort of doing that process, even though it doesn't count. They're doing that process with the political leader, who then looks at the data and says, all right, well, 90% of my constituency wants me to vote yes in a particular, let's say, gun reform.
Right.
You feel that right now, that elected leader, you feel right now he's not doing a good job at understanding how the constituency would actually vote on that particular bill that comes up in front of the House or the Senate?
Well, there's 2 parts of it. And one is that most people don't really research it, an issue, because, their voice doesn't really mean anything. The people who already vote, they often do research a referendum or proposition, but that's a specific implementation. It's like a bill. So it'd be much easier to actually register your opinion about, like, what should we do for healthcare? Should we, there are different options. We could all, the federal government gives healthcare to employees in each state, and they get a great cost, a low cost for it. So we could say that anybody can pay the cost and join that system. Or we could have the Medicare for all, or we could have a real public health care system where doctors work for the government. There are different options.
I'll tell you what's interesting here.
And that's much easier to make an opinion on than to vote on a specific bill.
I'll tell you what's really interesting here. So right now, when people are furious about something or they're up in arms about something, I always hear them say, call your congressman, write to your congressman. And I used to work in the Senate. I was a U.S. Senate page for the 107th Congress. So I was there.
Wow.
I was inside of some of these senators' offices. It's really hard. I mean, put yourself in their shoes. Let's say you are a congressman and that day, what hits the fan, and the phones are sure they're ringing, but it's really disorganized. And the part that I like most about your system is it kind of makes that process transparent. It kind of gives everybody front and center. Here's 400,000 people in your district who feel strongly about a particular issue, and so everybody's reading off the same. Or as one of my mentors likes to say, everyone's singing off the same sheet of music. That part I like, because when we were in the offices and write to your senator or call your congressman type of thing, it's like analog. It's like really antiquated, ineffective.
Well, and a lot of people don't have time, or are or are too scared, or aren't sure what to say.
Yeah.
And it's not like there's this big list of options. See, on PeopleCount, you'll have a list of options. Right now, you can go to change.org and sign a petition for something, but you don't know what other people want. And if, there's a petition for it, there are people who'd like to sign a petition against it. So on PeopleCount, you'll get all those options.
Why? Okay, let's go to your candidacy for a second here. Okay. Because I think that's really important. As you start to get more supporters, as you start to raise campaign funds, I understand that you're going to make accountability very, very important for you. But why do you think you have a good shot at running against? This is a U.S. Senate race, correct?
Yes.
Against Feinstein?
Yes, Feinstein, and just a couple days ago, De Leon in the state Senate got more votes from the Democratic Party. So neither one has the Democratic blessing.
You'll be running as a...
I'll be running as an independent. I'll caucus with the Democrats, since this is clearly a Democratic state, but at the same time, I'll be representing the people.
Okay, so you're running as an independent. You'll caucus with the Democratic Party, and you will make this system of accountability one of your major campaign promises.
Right.
So that we, the people, in any district or in any state, every day, every week, are checking in on the issues. We are commenting and voting, so to speak, on where we stand. That then gives you, our elected representatives, something concrete, almost like marching orders.
Right. Let me stop you just a second. So you said commenting. There's no commenting in the beginning.
Voting.
You'll just pick one of options.
Okay.
One of the options.
Yeah,
as you say.
Ongoing voting.
As you say. Right. Representatives and senators receive a lot of phone calls, but people don't really know what to comment on unless they spend a lot of time learning about it. And then, let's say, you're a senator from California with, there are 24 million voters and 50 million people. And I don't know, 7 to 14 million people vote in an election or a presidential election. And 100,000 people call in a day. That would be huge. And yet, what's 100,000 of 7 million? It really doesn't tell you what people want. It just tells you what the loudest people want.
So we put this system in place. Who pays for it?
So right now, let's talk about money. Right now, representative, on average, pays $1.5 million for a winning campaign. And that all that money is needed because communication with voters is so bad. You know, there's all this pushing of sound bites and messages, and I'm sure you, like me, receive these things and don't really want them, and they don't make a lot of sense. So it's expensive. But with PeopleCount, people will be pulling messages at low cost. And the plan is to make it for a district to cost at most $5,000 a month and $60,000 a year. So you can run an effective campaign. I mean, you still probably will want to hire a few people. So maybe for a couple of $100,000, you can run a successful campaign. Right now, like Dianne Feinstein has $10 million in her war chest. If I get like 500,000, I'll be able to hire a couple of people to finish the PeopleCount system and be accountable to everybody. I won't need $10 million.
Who owned?
Right
who
now,
would own after built?
okay.
After built, who would own the system?
So it's a right now it's a benefit corporation, and the plan is to franchise off the part that does U.S. issues. And there's a whole question of, you know, we could talk a long time about how the public or public groups will start submitting issues and how to make them quality issues. And there are interesting groups like deliberative democracy groups that know how to find good solutions for issues. So, you know, there's a whole question of how that group will work. But then PeopleCount will then make the software also work for state legislatures and for county governments and city governments and even your school district. And at the same time, in fact, there was one large democracy that, you know, foreign democracy that was interested in this system. And the United Nations has approached me and asked, and we've talked about it, somebody on a committee. In general, their committees are not funded. There's volunteers, so they don't have any money to put toward it. But the United Nations is looking for a way to become democratic and represent people instead of just countries. So PeopleCount itself will develop the software and do all these things. It's a California benefit corporation, which is a new kind of corporation that's just for the benefit of society.
No,
it does make a profit.
I'm familiar. So it would remain a private entity.
I don't know. My guess is that after it's successful, it would become a nonprofit. But
I wonder if this is something.
If I made it a nonprofit now, it would be under the control of a board, and there's nobody who'll do that, and so it needs to grow first.
I wonder if this is something that could be put on the blockchain. Are you familiar with the blockchain?
Yes. Yeah, I understand a lot about blockchain technology, but I don't really see, you know, and I see a lot of ways it could be used, but I don't see how it would be valuable in this case. Here's
where I could see somebody having a little bit of concern, right? So this accountability system becomes really important. It becomes widespread and widely used, and represented officials are basically taking their marching orders from.
Stop it! Stop. Okay. It becomes used. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. One concern, nobody's written this yet. I'm just thinking in real time.
Sure.
One concern I could see people having with such an accountability system that is privately owned and run is, you know, this thing becomes really important, and it actually, like, you know, laws are actually going one way or another because of the data and because of how certain things are showing up for either the candidate or the elected official. how do you stop tampering? How do you stop skewing the numbers, especially if it's especially if it's in the private and not the public domain?
So in the beginning, it'll be all private. But after a while, once it's established, the code will become public domain code.
Okay.
It'll become an open source project so that it can all be inspected.
Got it.
And, those are great concerns and they have to be dealt with, but, it's a little too early for that at the moment. And I mean, if you want to reach out to your, 30 million viewers and fund this right now, we can, change it to be a completely public structure now. But working on it myself, I need a little bit of funding to get it going and a smaller structure.
There's that makes total sense. But you envision it sort of going into some type of public or some type of non-for-profit domain, because look, this thing is only going to work if there's integrity, like 100% integrity inside of it, because the last thing you want is, good political folks just being elected, and then they read something that says, hey, 90% of my people want me to vote this way, and that's actually not accurate.
Right. What works in industry is specialization. And so PeopleCount is going to work on great software. And as I say, there'll be organizations set up, one organization per government, public organizations set up to handle the data and handle the questions. But there'll be PeopleCount will set up processes for that and make sure it's all transparent. So you'll have a process with oversight has integrity, that's working in the political arena, and at the same time you have PeopleCount, which is just focused on making honest, transparent democracy possible and work better.
What do you think? How much time do you have from now until your election?
The primary for California is the first week of June.
The first week of June?
Right.
Okay.
So if I can raise some money, there's time to launch. So we'll see.
Okay. And but you're running one way or another. PeopleCount aside, you're running no matter what.
Sure, but I think the chance of getting money for my campaign and enough to get PeopleCount going is much more probable than the chance that enough people will, listen and try it to actually elect me. So I think, it would probably turn out that way. Democrats are very open to this and very interested, mainly for other states. A lot of Democrats are very committed to the Democratic Party, so they just might choose their, Democratic candidate.
All right. Well, let's talk about the run. So, why are you better than Senator Feinstein?
Feinstein is known to be a little conservative on various issues, whereas I would actually know what the people want and represent them. I think I'm also more of a mainstream Democrat. Plus, she's part of the current system, and she does a good job at it. But in 2009, there was an anti-corruption bill that was brought up, but it went nowhere. We don't hear, and that's extremely important. You know, that would be one of my high priorities. In fact, when the group that is backing it, Represent.us, did a survey of people, they found that like 97% of Americans wanted it. But she doesn't keep pushing it. In fact, she touts her, spearheaded the effort to make automatic weapons illegal. And now they're legal again. And so she's pushing that again. And she's been doing that for years. And, you know, she's stuck. She's stuck within the current paradigm. I have a lot more ideas, a lot of creativity, and, you know, I'll bring the people into it. You know, as a mainstream Democrat in a democratic state, there are a lot of things that I want that Congress are not doing, and that it looks like a lot of people want. Like most Americans wanted America to stay in the Paris Accords, but that was ignored. At the time, it was not that most Americans thought global warming was real or climate change was real and our fault, but they did want us to stay in the talks. And as I said, that was ignored. And now with the huge weather events, a majority of people might be, you know, for reversing climate change, and America could lead on that. But without bringing people into it from red states, it's not going to happen.
You know, here's an interesting thought. So we the people elected a non-politician as our president, and there's something about that probably makes a lot of sense if you look at sort of the American dissatisfaction with just politics and government in general. So to make it a little bit more succinct, I would say that Senator Feinstein is a career politician. You're not a career politician. You're an engineer. You like problem solving. You've spent a lot of your life out of the limelight. You don't need it. You don't care for it. You just want to see things get better. So you're bringing your engineering
Absolutely.
genius that you've built over a lifetime, and you're now going to apply that in the political government arena.
Right. And I can bring something Trump seems to lack, which is a humility. My concern is to make the country better and to listen to people, not to, you know, say my stats are good or lie about the news. And we could talk about the news for a minute, because right now the news is, you know, makes their money from sensationalizing what's happening. And, you know, they need to attract eyeballs. There's not a big market for just information. But if people are voting on issues, suddenly they want information about it. In the demo I've designed, you know, there are some issues, and then I've looked on the web for, you know, nice articles, information articles from liberal and conservative bent and from a balanced perspective, and they're just not there. Or if when they're there, they're long and complicated. But if there were people, you know, if people were coming on the site to vote on issues, a lot of media would love to produce, you know, better, succinct pieces on the issues, so we could be better informed.
So I personally don't know a lot about the current, you know, Feinstein in the state of California and what people think about her. I'm curious to know, everybody watching this and the people who catch it on demand. Rand here will be running against her, so this is your opportunity, because we don't have the platform set up yet. This is your opportunity to...
Well, and at the same time, I'm willing to work with her. You know, if she wants to also be accountable, she's welcome to use the software after it's created. If she'd like to just become an early customer and provide the funding, I'm willing to let her be the kind of candidate that I propose. I'd be willing to step aside. I'm running for senator because I could do a great job, and I could, at the same time, I could get the system finished and bring attention to it, as well as to United.Vote. There are a lot of people who would like to see us moving to a new system and looking at other opportunities.
It makes sense. I see your motivation. One way or the other, you want politicians to have more accountability to the people. And whether that's you getting the seat and getting on the inside and making that happen, or whether it's convincing the incumbents that that is what's better for all of us, one way or another, that's your slogan, accountability. One way or another.
Politics can be simply how we design our future together. And government can be how we work together, how we build that future. That's what I'd like to see. And I'd like to see that for other countries too, and for the world.
And for people who say, well, we do have accountability in the form where if enough of us are really angry at an incumbent, we'll vote him out. What do you?
How's that working for you?
It's also,
I mean, we see that in the low approval rate.
I do have to say this. That's an incredibly slow process. If we're thinking outside the box, let me ask you this question. Why not just remove the middleman? Why not let we the people vote directly on issues? And what then is the function? If really what you're saying is we want the constituency to represent the actual voting and the actual legislation, why do you even need the middlemen? Why not take the politicians out of the equation?
So there are two problems with that. One is that how do we get from here to there, right? We have to change laws. We have to use the political system, which doesn't work. So we can't get there from here. But once we have PeopleCount, then we can consider that, right? And we can have accountable people, either they'll do that or we'll vote them out. Secondly, I thought there was a second one, but I'm not sure what that is at the moment.
I'll give you a second one.
There are people.
What most people I've heard, because I still don't understand why we go to voting booths. Like that's, to me, that just seems very archaic and old school, and I can't believe it's 2018 and we haven't figured out a way to make voting a little bit more, I don't know, technologically up to date. But I could see people saying, people saying, look, not everybody has a computer. Not everybody has a laptop with internet, so then you, if this is mostly being run, I'm imagining it in my head as a website and, certain people.
So we can look up the stats for that, and I think it's like 80 or higher %. But yeah, if we want to, so the question is, what do we want? Do we want to have, for everybody to have access to computers? Do we want to, a lot of people who don't have computers could go to the library and do it. We could put more computers in libraries. We could ensure everybody has a cell phone. If we want to do that, we can do that. But, is our government going to figure out that we want to do that and put money to it? They haven't yet, and they're not even thinking about it. As for the, why we're not voting online and on our phones, we could. It would take, again, an open source effort or a few open source efforts. It's just something we have to fund, and people would be happy to fund it if we all said we want it. There's a lot of fear about it, but there's no real, it's not realistic yet because our political system is dysfunctional, so people aren't really grappling with the ideas. We didn't develop the technology to put a man on the moon until we said, or Kennedy said, we'll put a man on the moon in 10 years. So once the people say, yes, we want this, we'll do it.
This would definitely bring the younger demographic into the equation a little bit more. If you made voting, etc., on the phone and on the computer, you'd appeal to, and made it easier. You'd appeal to a lot of the younger people who don't vote. That's another interesting thing. Young people, 18.
Yeah, I haven't done a big survey of them, but yes, in general, it's a much easier sell. They're much more interested, and this is this is an accountability system. PeopleCount, will be accountable to you. Will have an effort to make that open and transparent as well, including any salary. I need a salary to live, but that will also be transparent.
It's an interesting thing to think about that when you talk about any type of political campaign, the political landscape in general, it's interesting to think about the politicians aren't really catering to their constituency. Not really. A
lot of them try.
Hold on. The rule of politics is you cater to the people that vote. And that's right. A big difference, because the millennial who's on Facebook going, I can't stand what so-and-so just said, they don't care, because the chances of you actually voting are very low. So they're not talking to you. They don't care what you think because you don't vote. So what you have is a lot of smart politicians. They run campaigns and they vote to appease the particular demographic that actually does vote.
Right. So there's another part to that. I mean, the whole system has evolved to be the way it is, and it stays, pretty much the same. It stays as a system where money matters, and where the loud voices and the people who vote in the primary matters. And when we have a very low voter turnout, and a low rate of people even signing up to be voters, and that's because it's not rewarding to vote. Your voice doesn't matter. The parties are divisive, and they're always saying negative things. The whole system is built to have exactly the results that we have. Even though, as I said, in the beginning it was designed to be very effective, and maybe it was. And so what we need is an environment that rewards participation, simple participation, and simple. I mean, as I said before, that a politician can't be accountable to the people unless the people are holding them accountable. So it only happens a little bit once every 2 years. But if we can do this ongoingly, provide an environment that rewards the behavior we want, it can work. And at the same time, this is just the initial design, and we'll get feedback and we'll get ideas. And as I say, there are these other groups that have done very interesting work that, politicians ignore. In fact, Congress has some very antiquated methods of deliberating and finding information. There are a lot more best practices we could do there, starting with making agendas and milestones and goals. So all these things could, will transform the whole environment. And it'll be, slowly, or not too slow, but, you'll see step-by-step improvement in every aspect.
Okay, you're running for the U.S. Senate, state of California. If anybody catches this on demand and they like you, they say, this guy looks like an honest guy. We might actually get an honest one in there for once. And they want to help support you. What do they do? Do they email you? Do they?
So the campaign isn't quite ready to go, but if you go onto PeopleCount.org, in the top right, it says to help. And you click on that, and you can add your email address to my announcement list.
Will you put that link here in the Facebook Live after we finished in the comment section so that everybody has it?
Sure, I'll put a link directly to the page.
Okay. And what if somebody says, "Wow, this guy's he's onto something. I really want to be on his team." Can they email you? Can they?
So yeah, I mean, the first thing to do is to raise money for the filing fee, and to get the campaign going, but to put together a team. So yeah, I'm looking for volunteers to help as soon as possible with the campaign. PeopleCount as a corporation cannot have volunteers. And so yeah, put your email address on the announcement list, and sure, send me an email and include, where you are, where you're located.
And you're going to be filling all sorts of roles. You need a campaign manager. You're going to need a head of PR and communications. So you're right now starting the process of filling all those positions, correct?
No, I mean, unless I can do that with no money, then no, I'm not starting that. Well, yeah, so there'll be I've submitted the first draft of the crowdpack.org, I think it's crowdpack.org campaign. And, but anyway, put your email address on the list, and I'll send that to you when it's ready.
Okay, cool. All right, Rand, this was a fun conversation. One way or another, I think I agree that accountability is always effective, and any ways to increase accountability in politics and governments, I think, is all of our concerns. So thank you for sharing your ideas with us. Good luck to you in your run for U.S. Senate. And maybe we'll check back with you as time goes on and see how you're doing in the campaign.
Thanks much. As I said, you can put your address on the announcement list as well, and you'll get updates.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you, Rand.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.